Welcome to Sword of Laban. Today I'm going to share something about Easter that will blow your mind. I doubt you've heard this before. So when Jesus was on the cross in Matthew 27:46, one of the things he said on the cross was, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why have you forsaken me? Right? And usually we would think of this as, or maybe we've heard a sermon before where it says, oh, Jesus was under such pain, such agony, such despair. He was wondering why God had withdrawn from him. He was wanting God to come back to him. And that's why he's saying this. That is just wrong. Let's see what Jesus was actually doing. So, in ancient Jewish times, there was no scripture numbering system. I couldn't say to you, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. I couldn't say Psalm 22:3, because that system didn't exist yet. So what did people routinely do? And we see this in the Midrash and other ancient Jewish texts. People would quote the first line, the first verse, or the first few words of a scriptural passage. It's a common method of referencing the entire text. Now, of course, not only was the Jewish scripture not divided into chapters and verses yet, until much, much later, but because many people memorized large portions of scripture, quoting the opening line served as a verbal pointer that pointed the hearer's mind to that entire passage. It allowed speakers to evoke the full theological context, narrative, or emotional weight of a passage without reciting the whole thing. Kind of like if I said, oops, I did it again. Now you know what I'm referring to. The song's stuck in your head. So when Jesus said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, he was not despairing under such weight of agony that he almost couldn't handle it. He wasn't wavering. He was quoting scripture. He wanted Psalm 22 in the minds of the people that were there watching. Now, put yourself in the mind of somebody that is watching the crucifixion as we read Psalm 22. You'll see that some of the words seem to be coming from Jesus' own heart and mouth, and some of the words are actually describing what you are feeling as you're watching the crucifixion. This is fascinating, guys. I've also got here an interlinear Bible, because in a few places the Hebrew word is going to matter, right? We're going to look into some of those difficult translations. So here, Psalm 22, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring? Now, I will posit that Jesus isn't necessarily saying, God, why are you so far away even though I'm roaring? He is actually empathizing with the people that are watching, right? If you're watching the crucifixion, you'll be wondering, why is God not stepping in right now? Why did God let this happen to the man who I believe is the Messiah? Why didn't God just step in? Why did Rome win this? So in many ways, Jesus is providing the people that are watching the crucifixion with something that shows that he knows what they feel. In verse 2 here, oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season, and am not silent. Now, in Matthew 22, which we just read here, 46, this is when Jesus says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? That comes right after a mention of darkness from the 6th hour until the 9th hour. And if I understand correctly how Jewish clocks work, or Jewish time system, that's actually from noon until 3 p.m. So it's dark from noon until 3 p.m. It's light before that, it's light after that. And Jesus is quoting this, that the very next verse that would have come to the mind of the hearers is talking about crying in the day and crying in the night. And they've just observed 3 hours of darkness. Continuing, but thou art holy, O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel. This is kind of a weird phrase here. Inhabitest the praises of Israel. So let's go ahead and to Psalm 22, interlinear, into verse 3. But you are holy, enthroned in the praises of Israel. That makes kind of a little more sense. It's a bit of a poetic flourish there, but I think this enthroned makes sense. And if you go to an interlinear like BibleHub.com, you can click on the number, for example, and you can see where else that that this has been used. So it talks about someone who's dwelling in a land and settling in a land and remaining together, dwelling together. So, O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel, would be that you are enthroned in the praises of Israel. That's your home. Continuing on, they cried unto thee and were delivered. This is talking about our fathers, right? And they trusted in thee and were not confounded. And this word confounded here, if we go down here to verse 5, to you they cried and were delivered, and you they trusted, and they were not ashamed, is actually an alternate translation here. Now, verse 6 is wild. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised of the people. Now, you may read some Bible commentaries or see some videos about how there's a worm, and it's this like scarlet worm, and it's got a whole life cycle where I can't remember all the details, but it like burrows into wood, and then the mother like takes care of the little worm larvae, and then it comes out, and then it's like red, so it's like blood, and then the wood is like the cross. And okay, fine. I think that's a little too detailed. I'm not doing it justice. There's a whole scientific like life cycle here going on. I'm not sure that the ancient Jews knew about that, but they certainly knew that there was a worm, and this word refers to a worm that when it's crushed, it forms a scarlet kind of dye. So that's significant. But actually, it's more than that. Some translations won't say the word worm at all. They'll just say red or scarlet, like blood colored. It's like the English word orange, right? That can refer to an orange, and that can refer to the concept of the color orange. In the same way here, the word worm can refer to a worm, or it can refer to the concept of scarlet. It's very similar to that. So another way to read this is, but I am scarlet, the scarlet colored, right? I'm blood colored. And this is as the people are watching Jesus be crucified, he's covered in scarlet blood that's coming out of his wounds. And no man, a reproach of men and despised of the people. Now we're getting into this whole theme of being a reproach and despised of the people. All they that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out the lip, which is an idiom, it's like stick your nose up at someone or something. They shake the head saying, he trusted on the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. And so on. So these kind of 3 verses are talking about the scorn that people, around him, that the Roman soldiers and others were doing towards Jesus. But this is mirrored exactly in a fulfillment of prophecy in the Gospels. So let's read that. Let's go to Matthew 27:39, where it says, these people are laughing, they're shaking their heads. So Matthew 27:39, same chapter we were reading at the very beginning of this video. And they that passed by reviled him, wagging their heads, and saying, Thou that destroyest the temple and buildest in 3 days, save thyself. If you be the Son of God, come down from the cross. And likewise also the chief priests, mocking him with the scribes and elders, said, He saved others, himself he cannot save. If he be the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. So that really echoes here. Wagging the head, that was the first thing that I read in Matthew 27. And then, this whole verse 8 here was given twice in Matthew 27, when first it was one group of people, and then second it was the scribes, that saying, he trusted on the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him now, seeing that he delighted in him. So they're questioning his divinity and questioning whether God is with him. Also, in other places, we're going to look at it. Okay, Mark 15:29, when people say, save yourself, come down from the cross. And in Luke 23, when they said, if you're the king of the Jews, save yourself, right? So I'm just paraphrasing. But through the Gospels, this is a consistent theme that he was mocked, derided, and, the people were actually doing these exact actions. They were laughing, they were shaking their heads, and they were saying that he should be able to deliver himself. Now, continuing into 9, and remember that Jesus' mother is there watching her son be crucified. Can you imagine? And Jesus' mother presumably would have learned this psalm. Perhaps Jesus is talking to his mother when he quotes the psalm, and he wants her to remember this. But thou art he that took me out of the womb. This is the psalmist talking to God. But thou art he that took me out of the womb. Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breasts. And so this is sort of the special shout out to potentially Jesus' mother there. And I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my God from my mother's belly. Let's continue, because it gets even wilder. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. Really, this echoes Isaiah 63:3, where Isaiah is speaking messianically as if he was Christ. And he says, I've trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me, etc. So going back here, we've got, there is none to help. Now many bulls have encompassed me, strong bulls of Bashan have beset me around. So Bashan was this rich, fertile area known for its good livestock, and so these bulls that are compassing him, strong bulls of Bashan, I mean, who else could it be but the Romans, right? They gaped upon me with their mouths as a ravening and roaring lion. Actually, I wonder if the bulls represent Rome, and then the lion represent the Jews that crucified him, potentially the Sanhedrin and so forth, because the symbol of Judah was a lion. Now in verse 14 it says, I am poured out like water. And remember that in John 19:33, it says that when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was dead already, and they brake not his legs. But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith there came out blood and water. So let's go back to Psalm 22. I am poured out like water. The psalmist is using this as a way that he is just exhausted. He's just done with. But Jesus is literally, water is pouring out of him, right? And all my bones are out of joint. Now, it doesn't say that bones are broken here, and specifically in John, the special mention was given that they break not his legs, and that was right next to the part about the pouring out of water. So John was also familiar with Psalm 22, and he knew that this was being fulfilled. Let's continue. All my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. I couldn't find a parallel for this in the Gospels, but this is just so beautiful and poetic that Christ's heart is melting right there on the cross. Just melting with compassion and pain for the sins of the world. Let's continue. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws, and thou hast brought me into the dust of death. Let's continue. For dogs have compassed me. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I don't know what else to say about that. They pierced his hands and his feet. Let's continue. I may tell all my bones. That's a little bit of a weird one, so let's read that in the interlinear. Go down to 17. I can count all my bones. Now, this is, you can only perhaps count your bones if they're not broken, because you know how many there are. So maybe this is just a poetic way of saying that it has a connection at least to Jesus's bones not being broken. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. So go back to John 19:23-24. Let's go up a little bit. We've got here, then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garments and made 4 parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now the coat was without seam, woven from the top throughout. There's a lot of detail about Jesus's vesture here. It must have been like really nice or something. I don't know. Then said they therefore among themselves, let us not rend it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be. So there's casting lots, just like we read in Psalm 22. Remember, going back to the beginning, Jesus is quoting scripture here. He is bringing to mind Psalm 22 in the minds of all those that hear, so that they will understand what they are seeing, what they are witnessing. And these people that have just heard this, they've experienced light, and then darkness, and then light. They've experienced, or they've seen or observed Jesus being mocked, being spit upon. They've observed people casting lots over his garment and so forth. They've seen all of this. And if the dots haven't connected in their mind yet, then this will connect some of the dots in their mind as to what's going on. And I do want to point out that this is going somewhere good, right? So Psalm 22 so far has been all about, this is hard. All these bad things have happened. They're ridiculing me. They're piercing me, and they part my garments among them, and they cast lots by my vesture. But it does end well. So we're going to get to that bit. We'll probably go up to about verse 19 and maybe 20, 21. There's 31 verses in the chapter, and certainly you can read the rest yourself, but we'll just go through the first half of the chapter, and you'll see that it does lighten up. And so that is what I think is Christ, what Christ is trying to do. He's trying to show the fulfillment of Scripture, and he's also trying to point towards the positive and hopeful message of Psalm 22. Let's continue. We got up to 18. Be not thou far from me, O Lord, O my strength, haste thee to help me. And this is a reminder to the people that are watching, that are witnessing this, that they can have faith, and that they can call upon God and say these words, but be not thou far from me, O Lord, O my strength, haste thee to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. This one's an idiom, a little bit weird, so let's go to it in verse 20. Deliver me from the sword, from the power. So basically, my precious life is deliver my life from the power of the dog. And the dogs we talked about earlier up, that's the dogs that are compassing around. In fact, I guess at this point we will stop, and hopefully you've got the gist of it here. Jesus, when he was on the cross, he said precious few words. And one of those words or phrases that he used was this psalm. And he wanted his hearers, and he wants all of us, to remember Psalm 22. He's not saying that because he was in such agony and despair and he couldn't handle it anymore. And, this is Jesus in majesty and glory on the cross there, completing his mission and doing all that the Father commanded. And there he is on the cross, still connecting with us, still empathizing with those that are watching this agonizing scene, and still saying to them that it's going to be okay, because this is the fulfillment of Scripture, and this ends well. And they will remember that from Psalm 22. So I hope that has brought a little bit more insight into Jesus' crucifixion for you. And for now, this is sort of